I'm not quite sure why, but I think I like this tank. I really do. Today's video is sponsored by the free Eagles app for War Thunder. Download the app in the video description below and use the code shown on screen to get 10 golden eagles right now. Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome aboard the Italian M26 Ariete. I think this is how you pronounce it. And this is a really nice match, and I had a lot of good battles in this tank. Now let me quickly recap it. This tank is nothing special. However, the battle rating is 6.3. So after 7.7, this is again 1.3 basically lower. And that means you are very often top tier. You play very often together with the Germans. And I think that is a bad thing and a good thing. First of all, that you're top tier is obviously a good thing, especially because this tank does not really do greatly against top tier tanks. I mean, 6.7, can you imagine this tank playing against IS-6, T-34, the American version, or even hell against the Germans? You have difficulties, as well as your mobility is not the very best. I have no idea up until this point where this shot came from. So here we are on Stalingrad, and this is the first time that I got this map in quite some time. I always seem to get the 3-4 maps, always the same maps. I don't know why, it's not very nice. And yeah, so this is the first time in quite some while, in weeks, since I got this map, and I was actually looking forward to play it, and I wanted to shoot a split second earlier to not hit the driver's port and not hit the rounded part of the machine gun port, but of course I hit it. So let's shoot under the tracks and just blow him up. So let's decap the capture zone and drive out it again, but then I see that this Panther rolls in again, so yeah. And what now follows is a bit of a risky gameplay. I get into a better position. So now let's talk about the M26 Ariete. It's the first Italian premium tank higher than tier 2. In fact, this is rank 4 if I'm not mistaken, with 6.3. You can purchase it as a bundle, and the full name is M26 Pershing 132A Division Corazzata Ariete. That's the name. I have no idea what is the historical background, but it is of course a copy-paste version of the American tank. Also at 6.3, it's the same stats. It is a nice tank, it's a reliable tank, but it's not very fast, and the armor is, well, it lets things to be desired. Although at medium to long range hull down, you are a tricky target for non-high penetration guns. So I think when you angle a little bit and you're behind bushes, I find that Russian 85mm guns very often seem to bounce, but the second they have a clear shot, you're done. And this is again a first impressions game. Really, you bring nothing new to the table. In fact, tanks like the STA-1, STA-2 with the heat FS, they can deal with higher tier opponents, although also not having a lot of armor and not having better gun handling. Pretty much they have the same gun, except for the ammunition. Your mobility, as I said, is nothing great. In fact, you feel a little bit like a tiger in this respect. So you're not awful, you can reach respectable speeds, but sometimes you really feel sluggish. But then again, sometimes you just seem to go. You seem to go off. You have around about 12 horsepower per ton ratio, so nothing spectacular. Where it's really going be impressive is 15, around about this. And so 12 is just not good enough for a medium tank, in my opinion. So currently you are very often top tier, and that is good, and that makes the tank worth getting at the moment. But I cannot give you any prediction for the next few patches, how Gaijin might change the matchmaker, how Gaijin will, well, actually deal with the Italian tanks in the future, like the entire tech tree, how this tank will fit in, if you can get it in a lineup, whatever. The next thing is the air support. Now with this patch the French Air Force came in, and they have a fantastic ground pounding potential, especially with the American planes in their lineup. They just can wreck stuff. Bombs, rockets, fighter capabilities, you name it. You have a big wish list, and the French planes just give you what you desire for ground pounding. In the Italian tech tree, you are very, very limited. I tend to say that this is the worst CAS nation, so in terms of ground support for dealing with tanks. Yes, you can occasionally drop a 100-kilogram bomb with a fighter on it and try to do the anti-fighter role then afterwards. By the way, I didn't rush the shot because I know I had the time, and he just made it easy for me. So again, you can see when the armor is angled and he just shoots roughly in your direction, you have a good chance of absorbing the shot. But a very well aimed shot, you just blow up. You are just dead. But you have quite some ammunition count to deal with. So let's recap. Currently, this is the only tank. Currently, you have 3 respawns guaranteed in arcade with this tank. And in realistic, you just need to get the required spawn points. So you are practically having 2 backups per match, but no other tank. You play very often together with the Germans. You play very often together with them at top tier. And I think when you really want to compare this tank, it gives you nothing outstanding compared to what the Germans have, to what other nations have. So it's really funny if you fight American M26s in this respect. But overall, nothing spectacular. However, surprisingly reliable. Surprisingly not trash. And it's really the mobility that made me question how good this tank is. One thing about the Germans team that I really realized at this battle rating is that they played straightforward, and that this is bad. What are you talking about? Germans go directly for the objective, but they are not as fast as, for example, the Russians, which is just simply your major opponent. And something like the Panther and the Tiger, they are more the heavy tanks, but they do not really have something with good mobility to support them. You are not that mobile either, however you can flank, and you are then basically a Panther-like tank with a 88. This is the best summary if you are experienced with German tanks, and if you then flank, you can pretty effectively harvest a lot of the Russians, but then there are always a horde of T-34s behind you that just flanking harder, faster and more efficient. So what the Germans have to learn is to flank more. Something like the Tiger or the Panther can do it, but it's not very obvious. And Russians also push very hard for the objective, but there is always a horde of T-34s at this battle rating that flank. If you take this into account, if you adapt to this, you are a little bit in the advantage over the T-34-85. And I once made a tank review about the M26, if I remember correctly, where I described it as a, well, American T-34-85 with gun depression. And it has a little bit more hull armor, normally, but not that much more effectively, to be honest. And, well, it's not really faster. In fact, it feels so much slower. In a straight line, you can reach a respectable 35, 38 kilometers an hour, but then that's it. And so there is a bit left to desire, but this tank just feels reliable. I get a lot of kills per battle, and the income is certainly nothing to complain about, as we will see later on in this battle or in the post-battle results. So yeah, this tank is nice. You have backups basically for free, unless you don't have the required spawn points. But it's nothing outstanding. If you have something like the American version, you know exactly how it's like. If you, well, are used to the Tiger, you have something that just has a higher battle rating, a little bit of different armor layout, and yeah, so very much comparable. And that's basically everything that you need to know about this tank. So it's not very fast, but it's fast enough. It doesn't have a lolpan heat FS gun or something like this, but the APHE does the job, and I don't think there is any need for the APCR, although to take a few rounds of those with you is always nice. And yeah, here we are heavily celebrating our victory. It was a fast battle, it was a nice battle, we didn't have to wait for too long, and so let's have a quick look at the post-battle results. And as you can see, we got for our 8 kills and 1 capture zone 84,000 silver lines. Without a booster, but with a premium account in the premium status of this tank. And also 8,000 modification research points. So this would be much more, I guess, if there would be anything to be researched. Also, I got a Survivor award, which is really nice. And yeah, I also was first in team with 2,347 score points. So I was always in the right spot at the right time. I didn't overextend, and so the tank actually feels rewarding. It does. But I don't know how this tank will perform in a lineup, how it will perform when the Italian tanks actually arrive, if Gaijin brings up other well, alternatives in the premium shop. But I have to quickly summarize. It's a okay tank. It's okay if you use it correctly, flank a little bit, use the APHE for side shots, try to avoid head-on engagements, try to really one-shot your enemies. The APHE does it actually pretty good, and just use common game sense and you have a pretty good tank. That's my first impressions of this tank. Once there is more to talk about, again with better CAS, with a complete lineup for the Italian tanks and so on, I will return to this tank. But for the moment, you just saw this tank is actually pretty nice. So that's it for me today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Please give this video a like if it did. Subscribe if you want to see more. And we'll see each other on the battlefields of War Thunder.